Hey, welcome to Lead Up Podcast. I'm Mike Harbour, and I'm grateful that you're here with me today listening to episode 449 of the Lead Up Podcast. Saying, look, our mission is to help you, the leader, lead more effectively. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most critical decisions you make as a leader. The title of today's episode is Why Hiring for Who Builds Elite Teams. One of the most, if not the most critical decision you're going to make as a leader is who decisions. I'm going to get more into that as we go forward, but who you hire matters. Think about your current team. If you could restructure it with some different people, would you do that? Now, I don't mean that you have bad people, but what I know is working with leaders all over the globe, working with leaders all over the United States, different companies, hundreds of different companies. Teams are made up of people that are high performing and people that are low performing. In the world of leadership or organizational development, we often talk about employee engagement. And we have people that are highly engaged. About 30% of people working today are highly engaged, meaning if you've got 10 employees, only about 3 of them are highly engaged. You don't have to worry about them. They come to work, they do their job, they don't cause any problems. They take care of the customer at a very high level. On the other end of that, about 20% of your employees are low engaged, poorly engaged, meaning they cause problems for them. They're disruptive on the team. You have trouble getting more out of them. They gossip. They don't show up on time. They don't treat the customer with the respect that you want. Now, all of those are leadership issues. Many times they're hiring issues or accountability alignment issues that we have to work on and create our leadership. I'll talk about that a lot in the Lead Up Podcast. So there's many episodes that you could go back and refer to. You can grab a copy of my book, Quit Losing Talent, the Expanded Edition on Amazon, where I teach different tools and tactics and strategies about how to do that as well. If you're interested in learning more, maybe from a coaching or training perspective, you can certainly reach out and talk to me more about that. The good thing is, so I talked about 30% highly engaged, 20% poorly engaged. There's a 50% of the employees that sometimes they're engaged and sometimes they're not. And that's where you really make your money as a leader. Can you move that sometimes engaged, that mid-level engagement? Can you move them to the other side of the fence where they're highly engaged? One of the things that helps you do that is making sure that we hire the right people. So think about it like this. When you're building high-performing teams, skills are essential, but they're only part of the equation when it comes to hiring people. What I believe and what we believe and help companies work on here at Harbour Resources is that hiring with purpose means looking beyond resume, beyond those qualifications, and instead finding out about who these individuals are that you're interviewing, that you're talking to, what makes them tick, who they are internally, how are they wired, their personality traits. Find out as much as you can about their background, their work ethic prior to showing up, their character, how they handle certain situations, because we want to hire people that align with our organizational values. Now, that begs for another question. Do you know your organizational values? Like if I asked you, what are your company's 3, 5, 7 values right now? Could you rattle those off from memory? Could you tell me what those values mean? Could you tell me how they're defined? Could you tell me the behaviors that model those values? Check out Target Check Your Values in my book, Quit Losing Talent. It's the very first tactic in the front of that book. Now, the way I've written that book is you can refer to any time. You don't have to read it from front to back, but I put target check as the very first tactic in that book because I believe it's the most important thing. It sets up your success as a leader with everything else that you do, especially on the hiring front, because we want to hire people that align with our values as a company and as a leader. And if you does the ability to foster this elite leadership and create thriving, unified teams, it requires that members of the team don't just fit the role, but they transform it. Those are what I call A players. They transform, they make it better, they make the team better, they bring everybody else up. And so this is why hiring for who fit, not skill set, is a tactic that you have to learn as a leader. It's a skill that you have to learn. It's a competency that you have to be really good at. Too often, hiring decisions emphasize what a candidate can do, like their technical skills, their education, their experience, their certifications. And these are important, especially if you're hiring a brain surgeon, by the way. I don't care what their personality is like, if they're digging into my brain and removing a brain tumor. But the reality is most jobs don't require that, right? They require communication, collaboration, teamwork. And so who they are and how they show up, what they value is important. Those skills, that training, that education, even the experience does not tell the full story. So your leadership success depends largely on how someone approaches their role. Are they disciplined? Are they resilient? Are they goal focused? Are they collaborative? Can they work well with others in the sandbox, as they say? So these personality traits inform people's behaviors. Think about your own behavior as a leader, as a spouse, as a parent, as a friend. It's your values that drive your behavior, and they influence how a skill is going to be applied. Now, can these things be developed? Absolutely. Can we develop character? Absolutely. I'm a believer that anybody can, if willing, develop some of these core personality and character traits that we're looking for, but it takes a great leader to be able to do that. So you have to begin to ask yourself, what kind of leader am I? Am I willing to spend the time to help someone develop that character that I need? Or do I want to hire someone that's already there? Look, psychologists, there's all kinds of studies on people. I use assessments with people every single day to help them understand themselves, create self-awareness, their emotional intelligence, to lead and communicate better. But psychologists describe personality using the big 5 dimensions. This is just an assessment that you can think about, some core competencies, all of these things. I'm not prescribing any one for you, but I just want to help you understand that there's things that can help us think about these things more effectively. They use this acronym OCEAN, OCEAN, openness to experience. The O is openness to experience. That's a creativity and a willingness to try new ideas. Look, we want to hire people that are open to our coaching, to try new ideas, to do things our way, not their way when they join the team. That's important when we're hiring people. How about conscientiousness? Does your job that you're hiring somebody for, this role that you're wanting to put somebody in, does it require conscientiousness? This reliability, this discipline and organization and conscientiousness to others' feelings and what their needs are. Look, one of my biggest complaints is just a lack of compassion or empathy or customer service today. You go to these places, even where I bake today versus 20 years ago. Look, I've ran millions of dollars through the bank that I use over the last 20 years. And the way they used to treat me versus the way the people that they hired today treat me is completely different. That conscientiousness, that concern for customer and that relationship is not there anymore. I complain about it all the time. I still haven't changed banks, but I'm going to someday. Look, these are important. They've quit hiring people that make a difference for the customer. What about extroversion or introversion? Extroversion is one of those big 5s. Do they have energy, positivity, external engagement? Can they step out of their comfort zone and interact with other people? Agreeableness. And then the N is neuroticism. That's what the N stands for. It's really just emotional stability. Are they stable emotionally? Can they take coaching or criticism? Can they work under fire? Are they resilient under stress? These are things that we need to know. These are traits that directly impact workplace behavior. They can be skilled. I know some highly educated people. I've worked in the medical field, the healthcare industry, literally my entire life since I was 20 years old. And I know some highly educated people in the healthcare industry, physicians, accountants, pharmacists, IT people. I can go through all kinds of different job roles that I've worked with individuals. And the ones that have some of those personality traits that are critical are great at their job. They build great relationships. Some are highly educated and cannot do that. And it affects the way they work with others, the individuals around them, when they collaborate with their colleagues on their teams. I've seen high level executives in my 25 plus years of experience doing what I'm coaching, training, developing, high level executives not figure some of these things out. They get a new boss, new CEO comes in that's more relational, needs some of the things that we're discussing here today, and they lose their job. Someone hasn't led them well before, challenged them, coached them up to develop some of these skills. New leader comes in and they lose their job because they haven't developed some of these things. And I just want you to know these are things that we need to look for, because as a leader, when you hire somebody that doesn't have the right chemistry, that doesn't match the values, that's really the most frustrating thing for you as a leader. It causes you the most pain and problems. Now, I'm sure if you've hired enough people, you understand this. You've hired people for skill set, for education, for years of experience, only to find out they were a terrible fit for you, your leadership style, the team. There's one trait that outshines the rest. It's that conscientiousness. This is a characteristic that it embodies reliability, discipline, goal-oriented mindset. So these are things that I want to challenge you to think about. Hiring who? When we go back to the title of today's podcast, this episode, why hiring who builds elite teams. When you think about the team that you're wanting to build, you want to build that elite team where your leadership gets easier. Again, leadership is one of the hardest things we'll ever do. I'm sure you're really good at your technical skill, whatever that is, but when it comes to leading people, it's one of the hardest things that we'll ever do. I mean, just think about how hard is it to lead yourself. I'm one of the hardest individuals for me to lead, and yet I'm trying to lead other people. So leadership is one of the hardest things that we'll ever do. But if you learn when you're hiring to hire for who they are, is who fit. Do they match the values? Do they match the culture of the organization? And again, I'm not talking about 100% either. You'll never hire somebody that's 100% fit. I've interviewed thousands, over 20,000 people. Blessed to have had conversations with 20,000 plus people about their jobs, their personalities, what they love, what they don't like, type of leaders they like, type of leaders they love, type of leaders they hate. I've had thousands and thousands of conversations. And what I know is there's not two people that are alike, but I also know that in all of the people I've helped companies hire, not one of them has been 100% fit. But some of the things I'm talking about today will help you get there much faster. Now, let's talk about matching traits to tasks. While conscientiousness, I said, is the most important trait, it's a non-negotiable for most roles. There are other traits that rise in importance as well, depending on context. So extroversion, it drives success in leadership, especially, or customer-facing roles. I've seen people hire someone for a front desk role, maybe a front desk administrator at a hospital or a clinic, and they have horrible facial expressions, horrible energy, horrible tone of voice, body language. And that's the person they put out there to interact with the customer. That's the customer's first experience with your company many times. And so this extroversion is something that helps people rise to that level of leadership success or customer experience success. It requires passion and communication and they spark this motivation and ease for other people. What about openness? It fuels innovation, it helps people be creative or strategic in their planning. Openness to try new things. Just go back to that front desk clerk. We want somebody that's open to trying a new way to speak to people, trying a new way to show up in their body language or their facial expressions or their tone of voice. Agreeableness fosters collaboration, making it indispensable. Do you know someone that is not flexible at all? They're not agreeable at all. It's their way or no way. Is that you? If it's you, this is a skill, a trait, a who skill, a personality trait that you need to work on. I know for me, it's been one of the big challenges of my life. I haven't always been agreeable. I'm very rigid. I have my own values. And that doesn't mean I discount my values. I'm not going to waver from some of my hardcore beliefs to appease someone else, but I look for ways to be agreeable. One of the principles I learned early in my life, I was 23 years old. The first book I ever read was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits from that book is seek first to understand before trying to be understood. And I've worked for years now, 30 plus years, trying to apply that habit in my life. I'm not always great at it. I'm not always seeking to understand. I work really hard at it. But it's a skill that I'm still developing even 30 years after reading that. I'm still working on this agreeableness. Much better. I would say I'm an 8 out of 10, where I used to be a 2 out of 10 on that early in my life. So again, these are things I'm just challenging you as you're in this hiring process to think about. That being said, not every positive trait guarantees effectiveness. But for instance, agreeableness may promote teamwork, but doesn't always translate to assertiveness when tough decisions need to be made. See, that's where I sometimes would get in the way of myself, is I'm really assertive, maybe sometimes overly assertive. And so I wasn't agreeable. Some people are highly agreeable, but not assertive enough to stand their ground, or no, I've got a different idea, or I have a different perspective. So these are things, who are you looking for? You need to know these things before you step into that interview process. What about this neuroticism or low emotional stability? It poses challenges in a high stress environment, as individuals may struggle with criticism or pressure. What if you hire somebody that has this low emotional stability and you put them in a customer facing role where it's highly stressful? Customers can get frustrated and irate and start complaining. So here's the key for you when you're hiring an interview: match the traits to the role. Don't settle for general alignment. Be intentional about finding individuals whose personality will elevate not just the position, but the culture and effectiveness of the whole team. So what are we saying here? We want to hire with purpose and precision. Go beyond skills in the job description. Go beyond that. Look, I talk about this a lot in my book, Quit Losing Talent, the Expanded Edition. I've recorded multiple podcasts. You can go to my website, leaduppodcast.com, and just go to all episodes and just do a search for hiring or interviewing or asking the right questions during an interview. We've talked about it a lot on our podcast as well. So make sure you're digging deeper into who someone is, what you're seeking, those behaviors. This is why I asked you, do you know the values? And then do you know the behaviors that model those and create questions that help you get there? For example, we're looking for a dependable, detail-oriented, has nothing to do with job skill or credentials or education. What does dependable mean? What does detail-oriented? And then you start digging into how they show up in that. We value innovative minds, ready to think outside the box. That's going to get to openness. We need a resilient leader who excels under pressure. We're looking for emotional stability there. See, this clarity is going to help you attract, even in your job ads. I write about up-leveling your job ads in my book as well. Even in your job ads, you start highlighting those types of things in the job ad. It's going to help you attract a different candidate, not just somebody who's qualified, but someone who meets the values, expectations for the role you're trying to hire. And look, another thing you can do, and I highly recommend it, using assessments, whether it be DISC or Myers-Briggs or any of the other big 5 assessments. I use DISC a lot here in my business because it's real simple to use. But using assessments to really get to know how someone, I call it assessments, kind of like an internal X-ray or CT scan. How does somebody think? How are they going to behave? And that's really important in the interview. It doesn't mean I don't hire them. It just means I have an understanding of them and would they be a good fit for the type of role I'm trying to fill, and helps me modify my questions during that interview piece as well. Cultural fit, values fit is more important than any other skill set. There's an old saying, we hire people for what they can do, we fire people for who they are. When you learn to hire people for their who fit, you'll begin to build elite level teams. You'll create higher levels of engagement. Look, if you're a leader struggling right now with engaged, fully embodying team members, it could be because you have cultural misfits. Look, I'm not saying people are bad people. I'm not saying they're a misfit. I'm saying they're a cultural misfit, a values misfit. They would be a better fit somewhere else, potentially, especially that bottom 20% that are fully disengaged in the work. Now, your job is to figure out that 50% in the middle. How can you tie them into the values a little bit more? Go read my chapter on target check your values. Implement some of the ideas there. Start having your team meetings around your values. Start talking about values. Start having casual conversations about values more frequent. This is going to help you build teams that ignite change. We often say people are our most important asset. Are you making sure that when you attract that asset onto your team, they're going to be a good fit? If it's that important, don't hire somebody who's a misfit for your culture, for your values, because they're going to come in and be disruptive and create even more challenges for you in your leadership role. And you don't need those because leadership's hard enough already. Look, what we believe is that personalities drive passion. Passion ignites change. By prioritizing these who traits, these personality traits like conscientiousness, dependability, emotional intelligence, or resilience, what you'll do is set a foundation for teams that don't just perform, they excel. They become a lead. And then you as a leader, you get to relax a lot more. So just if you took some of these approaches that I'm talking about today, it helps you combat some things that are going on that are real alarming right now, like turnover, disengagement, reduced morale, burnout. See, hiring individuals who align with your mission and values creates a ripple effect, creating engaged employees that inspire others on the team. Strong leaders drive behavior change. Unified teams deliver exceptional outcomes for patients, for clients, for customers, for communities, for coworkers. So a few closing thoughts here as we wrap up. Revisit your job descriptions. Do they focus on skills or do they focus on traits that complement your culture? Where can you incorporate some personality type assessments for selection? How can you build interview questions that uncover emotional intelligence and alignment with your values and your mission? And then what will you do to seek out candidates who inspire others and embody your vision for excellence? Elite leadership begins with elite hiring practices. The decisions you make today shape your culture, shape your outcomes, and impact tomorrow. I would challenge you to choose with purpose who you hire. It begins with you, the leader, just reevaluating, throwing out the old ways of doing things and bringing in some new ways. Look, I hope this episode has been valuable for you. I know it's a high level topic. There's a lot of real granular things that we have to get really good at as a leader. That's what we're experts here at Harbour Resources, helping companies create a stay culture, a framework to quit losing talent. If you want to know more about that, shoot me an email, mike@harborresources.com. I'll look forward to hearing from you. Share this episode with your friends and colleagues, your CEO. Share it with him or her. Have them reach out to me. We'd love to talk to your team and organization about how we can help you begin to build some practices that are going to bring in better talent and help you create elite level teams. We'll see you on the next episode of the Lead Up Podcast.